You know, I can only think about the time when you had Tim Scott, and in response to Biden's address to the Congress 3 years ago, when he made this notion that America is not a racist country, and that you had Kamala Harris the very next day echo his sentiment. And yet, we still find evidence of white supremacists pretty much telling you that, yes, racism is pretty much alive and well. Now, when I read this story last night, it really made my freaking blood boil. It really did. And before we get into the commentary, I have a series of videos that I'm going to play that will provide much more information about this. And after we play these videos, that's when I'll provide my own commentary about this particular matter. Without further ado, let's get to it. DJ, spin that shit.
And now to a WSAZ investigation that we've been telling you about since Tuesday about two children deputies say were found locked inside a barn, like an outbuilding in Kanawha County.
And tonight we are learning more about what led to that discovery. And for the first time, we're hearing the 911 call from a neighbor who says they have been repeatedly reporting the problem to CPS. News Channel 3's Kim Rafferty joins us. And Kim, deputies tell us multiple reports have been made.
It's a disturbing discovery, deputies say they made Monday night in the Sissonville area of Kanawha County. Deputies say the 911 call came in at about 5:45 Monday evening. WSAZ has obtained that 911 call, and we have chosen to distort the caller's voice to protect their identity.
But there is a family that we have been calling CPS on multiple times. He has two kids locked in an outbuilding. They've been in there for days. They're in that with the red door. It's padlocked. Locked with a padlock? Yes, I've seen him open it, say something to the kids, and I watched him lock it back. The kids are locked in there. You can't miss it. It's a red, two double doors. They're red. They're locked in that, in the barn.
Deputies say they went to the barn after that 911 call, and that is when they found the two teens inside with no access to food, water, a bathroom, bed, and no way out. A couple of hours later, the deputies say these two relatives, Donald Lance and Jean Whitefeather, arrived back at the home and were arrested on felony child neglect charges. WSAZ reported that a couple calls were also made on the home at Cheyenne Lane involving abuse of the children that lived there back in May and September. Kanawha County deputies said they investigated those complaints and say the two prior ones were unfounded. The third call, however, Donald Lance and Jean Whitefeather were not home, and that is when deputies discovered extreme neglect the children faced. I also spoke with the West Virginia Child Advocacy Network, which works with CPS and law enforcement to investigate allegations of abuse and neglect.
So it's often happening in homes, it's happening in neighborhoods, so neighbors need to look out for each other.
Kate Flack is the CEO of that organization. She says the person that reported the concerns to law enforcement is a hero.
Contacting CPS centralized intake is a great way to start investigations and maintain your anonymity. So if anyone observes an actual crime where a kid is being physically or sexually abused or severely neglected, call 911 if it's happening like then or you just found out about it.
WSAZ has reached out to the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources to find out more about the process for reporting, how many reports were made on the home on Cheyenne Lane in the last year, and how quickly cases are investigated after the caller's initial report. In Kanawha County, Kim Rafferty, WSAZ News Channel 3.
So, the individuals that you see on this thumbnail, these two animals, Donald Ray Lance, 63 years old, and Janine J. Whitefeather, she's 62. They're out of Sissonville, West Virginia. And they were charged with felony, gross child neglect, creating a substantial risk of injury, according to a news release from the Kanawha County Sheriff's Office. Deputies said they were called on the 200 block of Cheyenne Lane in Sissonville, where 2 children were found locked in a 20-by-14 barn following a welfare call. These 2 monsters had black children locked up in a shed like they're animals. Animals. They were treating these children like they were animals. Had them locked in the barn, no kind of ventilation, no kind of nothing. No mattress, no nothing. You just had them laying on the floor like they're dogs. You 2 disgusting motherfuckers need to be put in prison. Matter of fact, you don't even need to be put in prison. As far as I'm concerned, your asses need to be under the jail. You lock these kids in a barn for days like they're animals. And then they weren't even allowed to go in the house. I got more. And I apologize if it sounds repetitive, but we got to get proper context. That's why I'm going to be playing a series of videos that might sound repetitive, but we got to get the proper context of it. The next video, DJ, spin that shit.
A Sissonville couple accused of human trafficking and forced labor of adopted children, including 2 teenagers who were found locked in a barn in Sissonville. Well, they're back in jail.
Now, during their arraignment this afternoon, Judge Mary Claire Akers significantly increased the bonds for Gene Whitefeather and Donald Lance. Anna Saunders joins us live in the studio tonight with the reason. Anna?
Dave, Gina, before setting their bonds to $500,000 cash each, Judge Akers said she has never seen an indictment quite like this, and that not only alleges the trafficked black children, adopting them from shelters and foster care, forcing them to work, but that they specifically targeted them because of their race. Jeannie Whitefeather and Donald Lance came in on their own for their arraignments, but left in cuffs after Judge Mary Claire Akers set their bonds at $500,000, more than double what they had already paid.
And I don't think I've ever seen an indictment like this in all of my time. It alleges human trafficking, human rights violations, the use of forced labor, human rights violations specific to the fact that these children were targeted because of their race, and their use as basically slaves from what the indictment alleges, along with human trafficking and neglect with serious risk of bodily injury or death. I don't find the bond to be sufficient.
Whitefeather and Lance were first arrested last October when a welfare check turned into the discovery of 2 teens apparently locked in a shed where investigators said they lived in deplorable conditions behind the Sissonville home. 1 other kid was found inside the house and 2 others were not home, all adopted by the couple. The indictment brought more than a dozen new charges against them, alleging human trafficking and forced labor, also civil rights violations, as investigators believe they targeted these children specifically from a shelter because they were black, forcing them to work as slaves. Whitefeather and Lance were originally in Washington State, and it is alleged they brought the children with them to Sissonville when they moved.
Counts 9 through 12 allege the use of forced labor, which I read as slavery.
Bond was initially set at $200,000 cash, and they were both able to post it. Prosecutors have said in a new complaint for forfeiture, the couple sold a $725,000 80-acre ranch in Washington State and sold their Sissonville home to post bond. And they believe both of these properties were paid for through trafficking. That will be decided in a separate court matter, but because of this, prosecutors say they found discrepancies in the financial affidavit Lance filled out for a court-appointed attorney, leading to a new charge on his indictment.
Some of the information on his face is inaccurate.
Lance had to fill out a new affidavit today as the two were taken back into custody.
Now, the next time these two are scheduled to appear in court is for their scheduled trial in September. Prosecutors noted there are volumes of evidence in this case for all sides to go through. Now, in terms of the bond issue with how the original bonds were paid for, that is to be worked out at a later date. Live in the studio, Anna Saunders, Eyewitness News.
All right, so the children who was recovered from these I don't even want to call them humans because they don't deserve to be called humans. These funky ass white supremacists here, right, had children who were 16, 14, 11, 9, and as little as 6 years old. You had a 6-year-old out there working as a slave? Oh, Lord. These motherfuckers should have never gotten bond in the first place. They should have never gotten bond in the first place. And a part of me, while I'm thinking about this in real time, they were in Washington State. How come the police in Washington State didn't get nothing about this? How do we know that they haven't been doing this shit when they were in Washington State? So you had these two lowlifes here having children do all kinds of slave labor. They was able to bond? How is that possible? How in the fuck can these two reprobates here get bond when they sit over here having children as slaves and putting them in outhouses and having them living in substandard living conditions, treating them like dogs? Deputies noted that the two teens, the 16 and 14-year-old, they wore dirty clothes and smell of body odor and had open sores on their bare feet. Deputies found a 9-year-old girl inside the main home 3 hours after law enforcement first arrived at the home. Lance arrived with an 11-year-old boy. Whitefeather came home about an hour after that and led deputies to a 6-year-old girl who was with the acquaintances from the couple's couch. Whitefeather told deputies that the teens were locked in the outbuilding but claimed they liked it. Now, who the fuck would like some shit like that? Who the fuck would like being treated like an animal, you dumb motherfuckers? Huh? Who the fuck want to be subjected to that kind of substandard living condition? These people are fucking sick. Washington, wherever they at in Washington State before they moved down to West Virginia, I believe the cops should alert the authorities out in Washington State, and they need to do their own investigation of what the fuck went on at that house. Now, as you saw in the video clip, they sold the house in Washington State, and they sold the house in West Virginia to allow them to post bail. But then the bail got revoked because they believe that the money that they made from the house purchases ties into the slave labor. So now all their assets has been frozen, and there's talk about those children receiving those assets. So all the money that these motherfuckers, these slimy ass, funky ass white supremacists you see here on this goddamn thumbnail, that money that they acquired is going to go to the children. So they had child abuse and child neglect up in Washington State. So it needs to be tried there too, if you ask me. These people, they ain't even people. These animals right here should have never gotten bond. Never gotten bond. And then the children. Let's think about the children who was victimized by these animals right here. Stuff like that traumatizes kids. These kids, these poor children who were subjected to that bullshit is pretty much scarred for life now. How could they trust anybody when they are subjected to substandard living conditions and forced to work for hours on end in the heat? Ain't no telling what they were being fed. It ain't no telling how many times they were fed. Those poor children had to go through that, had to be subjected to that bullshit. No thanks to these funky ass white supremacists right here. What's up, Black Spider? Salute to you. All right, I got another video. Like I said, it might look repetitive and all that, but I apologize. But it's like when you look at these stories here, it's the drip campaign, and you got to have, many pieces to put this jigsaw puzzle together. DJ, spin this.
A Sissonville couple accused of.
Oh, wrong one.
Tonight, 2 people are behind bars. They were also arraigned today after deputies in Kanawha County found children locked in an outbuilding with no access to food or water.
The deputies say they had received a lot of calls from the neighbors in the area who were concerned about the children's safety. News Channel 3's Adriana Doria joins us now live outside the sheriff's office with more on what is an unbelievable case for a lot of those deputies.
Yeah, good evening, Tim and Sarah. Really unfortunate situation that unfolded in Sissonville. Investigators were there on scene last night and into parts of this morning. I also got a chance to go to that residence where all of this unfolded and talk to neighbors in the area. And while they didn't want to go on camera, they all said that they were concerned for these kids and cannot believe something like this happened in their neighborhood. 2 people, 63-year-old Donald Lance and 61-year-old Jean Whitefeather, both behind bars on Tuesday, facing felony child neglect with risk of injury charges. The Kanawha County Sheriff's Office is crediting neighbors in the area for prompting the investigation.
We were very fortunate this time that when the people called, we were actually able to go out there and see what was actually happening with our own eyes.
The sheriff's office says deputies responded to the scene around 5:45 Monday evening. When they got to the scene, deputies found a boy and a girl, both in their teens, trapped inside a 20 by 14-foot shed. According to court documents, the girl said her and her brother were not allowed inside the residence and were trapped out in that shed for long periods of time every day.
They continued their efforts to try to make contact with someone that could gain them access to the barn or to the residence, and they were unsuccessful. So deputies eventually had to go ahead and force entry to the barn, where they did locate a juvenile male and a juvenile female.
The sheriff's office says that deputies also found another child located inside of the house in a loft that was about 15 feet off the ground. Deputies say Lance and Whitefeather didn't show up on scene until a few hours into the investigation, where they were then taken into custody. They say all the children found were completely unsupervised and without basic living necessities.
The living conditions especially were horrible because there's no plumbing, there was no, bathroom facilities inside there. They were, appeared that their hygiene was, just horrific. So it's all very concerning. The biggest thing was to try to get them out of that environment, and at least, the top priority was to get them in some decent care.
Now, that shed that was attached to the barn also housed many different animals, so while we were there on scene, humane officers were there picking up those animals. Now, what I will say is this is all still under investigation, and there are lots of questions still to be answered, but I can say that those children are now safe.
All right, thanks, Adriana.
Now, how can you guys be outraged? You guys allow this type of shit to happen. How can y'all sit there and talk about y'all outraged and y'all appalled that this happened? You motherfuckers let shit like this go down on a daily fucking basis. And y'all got nerve to run your mouth talking about y'all disgusting? These poor children hadn't bathed in days. A single table and with a chair and no beds were found. So you mean to tell me they ain't had no kind of facilities to use the bathroom? So how were they using the bathroom? Where were they using the bathroom? And you had them locked up in a damn shed? And you thought that was cool. Just like they did back in the slave days in the 1800s, right? No, y'all need your asses beat. For real. Y'all better be glad y'all was in the area where y'all could have got protected. Shit's disgusting. Kids got dirty clothes, smell of body odor, hadn't bathed in days. The floor was made of concrete and the walls were plywood, and a camera was placed in the corner. So you had a camera just to keep tracking what the fuck they were doing. I got one more video. DJ, spin that shit.
Eyewitness News at 5 starts right now.
The Sissonville couple accused of human trafficking and forced labor were back in court today. This is the case where Donald Lance and Jeannie Whitefeather were arrested after deputies found their adopted teens locked in a barn last fall in Sissonville. But as Anna Saunders explains, today's hearing was focused on their financial situation as prosecutors consider some of their money illegal.
That's right, Gina. As new charges of human trafficking, forced labor, and civil rights violations stacked up against Whitefeather and Lance, so did their bond amount as they are now back in jail on $500,000 cash bonds each.
But the matter addressed in court today was about the first bond they posted when they were able to put down $400,000 cash back in February. This raised red flags with the prosecution as they believe that money is contraband and are now looking to have it turned over to the state. It's the prosecution's ultimate goal to seize the $400,000 that White Feather and Lance posted for bond in February. The argument is that bonds were paid by selling homes in Washington state and in Sissonville, where human trafficking occurred. But what happened today is Kanawha County Chief Circuit Court Judge Mary Claire Akers signed a protective order for that money, meaning it must stay with the sheriff's office until the courts decide if it will be seized or not.
We're not trying to forfeit the money without due process. We just want to protect it and preserve it until we've had a chance to litigate the claim.
A 16-count indictment was recently returned against Lance and White Feather, going far beyond their initial charge of child neglect. Investigators now say the couple sought out and adopted 5 black children from a shelter, targeting them for their race to do forced labor. The complaint said Lance and White Feather first had them at this 80-acre ranch in Washington state and then moved to the Sissonville home. This is where deputies, while doing a welfare check last fall, found 2 teenagers locked in a barn in what investigators called deplorable conditions. After they were arrested, the 2 sold the Washington home for about $700,000 and the Sissonville home for about $300,000. Prosecutors believe they used that money for bond.
And the state's position is that these assets were used to maintain and harbor minors in violation of the human trafficking statute. Our position is that's not true, and we look forward to a court in which we can prove otherwise.
So for now, the money is supposed to remain untouched until the court proceedings play out. White Feather's defense attorney Mark Plants and Kanawha County Assistant Prosecutor Chris Kavaniak both said seeking forfeiture for human trafficking, though common in federal court, will be uncharted waters for all in circuit court.
I've never had one in 20 years. The human trafficking statute is relatively new. Chris Kavaniak's the prosecutor. He's formerly a federal prosecutor where they do this all the time. He's very competent, knows what he's doing. But this is an issue of first impression for me, and I think the court. I don't want to. When I looked this up, I couldn't find anything about it, and you notice that Mr. Kavaniak said the same thing, that in state court, this really hasn't been done before.
Now, with this $400,000 now protected, it can't be used at all right now while the protective order is in place. But if the state wins out in this and the forfeiture is granted, it could possibly be treated like drug seizure money, where percentages go to arresting agencies and the prosecution, or it is common for human trafficking money to go to the victims, which in this case would be the kids. All of that pending how this plays out in court alongside the criminal investigation. Live in the studio, Anna Saunders, Eyewitness News.
These people should have never gotten bond in the first place. Why keep saying they're people? They're not people. They're monsters. These monsters should have never gotten bond in the first place. When this thing got $200,000 after all the money they made off the labor off the backs of those kids, and you had a 6-year-old back there working, doing all kinds of farm work for long hours on end. A 6-year-old. A 6, 9, 11, 14, and 16 years old. Had them working like slaves. Treating them like animals. That's the thing I can't get over. That's the shit right there that is really getting under my fucking skin. That's the shit right there that is really getting under my fucking skin. 6, 9, 11, 14, and 16 years old. Have them doing farm work, locking them up in substandard living condition. You had a camera watching their every move. So once again, I ask you, how the fuck were they using the bathroom? Where were they using the bathroom at? They ain't got nerve to sit there and tell the cops that they liked it. Who the fuck would like some shit like that? When they don't have no clothes on their back. The clothes they do have is dirty. They can't bathe. The clothes ain't being washed and all that. They're reeking of body odor. Hell, the shed there, because if it's locked up, chances are they're peeing and shitting in the same area they're living in with no toilet. So now you got a situation where they could possibly be killed from that shit. And you two motherfuckers, lowlifes, you reprobates, get to call yourself breathing that boy. So here's my question, right? Because they were arrested back in October for this shit, right? How long has this been going on? Because I'm pretty sure that when you are bringing in adopted, say like you go to the social service, hey, I want to adopt some children and shit like that, right? I'm pretty sure there's paperwork you have to sign. I'm pretty sure there's an agreement that has to be made the way it look. There has to be provided these, these kind of conditions, stable homes, stuff like that, right? And there's supposed to be a wellness check. There's supposed to be a wellness check every so often. So, as Black Spider articulated, right? How long has this bullshit been going on? Because you can't just stop here in West Virginia. Remember, they were in Washington State. So we had to trace all the way back to what happened in Washington State. How long has this bullshit been going on? And the fact that the system let them get away with this shit for so long. Because I'm pretty sure social services should be rolling up on them at some point randomly to check on the welfare of the children, if they're supposed to be under the care of the children. If they're supposed to be in the care of the children, I'm pretty sure they're supposed to roll up on them at random times to check on the welfare of the children. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to happen. So we got a failure in place here, which allowed these reprobates to run roughshod. So why would the wellness check not being done? And I'm pretty sure that this varies from state to state, county to county, and all that shit. But it should take more than a phone call saying, "Hey, how are the children?" "Oh, the children's fine. They're eating their oatmeal right now." They can. This is a massive failure here by the system, and I'm supposed to trust you guys to care for those black kids? Oh, we got them. Somewhere where they can get the proper care and nourishment and proper treatment. I don't trust none of you motherfuckers, if you ask me. I don't trust none of y'all. So the fact you have people out here talking about their outrage and all that, man, miss me with that shit. Because you would never know. You will never know what it's like to be black. And to be treated like second-rate citizens and get called the N-word with the heart of y'all. Hell, I remember during the Jim Crow era, you had black babies being fed to alligators. Hell, where I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, they still got the market area. Anybody familiar with Charleston, South Carolina? On Market Street. When you walk down Market Street, there's that area where slaves were being bought and sold. They'll bring them in the port, and there'll be those slaves in that market area were being auctioned off. They still got that building up. I don't have no, I normally have words to describe shit, but I don't got no fucking words to describe this bullshit right here. I don't got no fucking words to describe this bullshit right here. You gonna sit up there and tell the cops that they like being stuck in the shed. You stink. I'm trying not to get too vulgar in this shit. This shit really pisses me off. The more details that came out about this fucking case. And you know what's sad? When they go to prison, they're not going to be treated like how they treated those kids or whatever. They're going to get 3 meals a day. They're going to get a bed. They're going to get be in comfortable living conditions and stuff like that when they're in prison. That judge, whoever that judge was in the first hearing, that judge need to be looked at. How can you set bail for $200,000 when you got this type of shit going on? They should have never gotten bail from Jump Street. Them motherfuckers should have never gotten bail from Jump Street. They should have been in jail from this whole goddamn time. And you got elected officials fix their mouths. That stupid ass motherfucker Tim Scott. Hey, Tim Scott. Hey, I heard you getting married on August the 3rd down in Charleston. I just might crash your fucking wedding, you chocolate milk dud head having ass motherfucker. Matter of fact, your head look like that Mounds bar. Can't be almond joy because to have almond joy, you gotta have nuts. Something you don't have, Tim Scott. I might crash your wedding. But then again, that might be contingent on you securing that VP nomination. Because she just might leave your stupid ass at the altar. Anyway. Yeah, Tim Scott fixing his mouth to run his mouth talking about, oh man, America's not a racist country. And yet we got this type of shit going on. See, going on the days where black folks, sitting up here, we shall overcome and all that. No, we're not singing no we shall overcome and all this other shit. We're just going to put a foot in your ass. You step incorrect. Mm-mm-mm. This was one of the most abhorrent stories I've seen in my lifetime. Of all the fucking articles I've read, of all the stuff I've seen, this was the worst. The worst story I've seen in my lifetime. A very close second had to do with the incident out in Cleveland, Ohio. Incident out in Cleveland, Ohio, you had a guy trapped this black girl in the house for like 10 years. He beat her, he raped her, he got her pregnant, had like couple children from like 2-3 children from the girl. That reprobate down in Cleveland. Y'all remember that story from a few years ago? Had her trapped in the house for 10 fucking years. Had her locked up in like a secret room. Say 16 a.m. in Seattle. Hey, man, I wish I could be in Seattle right now, man. I love that place, man. I really do. Anyway, I got to take the temperature down, man, because I'm really mad, man. I'm really fucking pissed off, man. Straight up, because this is bullshit. This is bullshit that this is going on in 2024. This is another thing too, right? Before I get up out of here, because these white supremacists sit up here and tell you, "Oh, racism is taught in the school." No, racism is not taught in the school. If you ask me, where the primary backbone for racism to get taught is in the home. It's in the home. The racist ancestors passed their racism on to their little offspring, and then their offspring passed the racism down to their offspring, all the way down to what we have now. So if you want to know the biggest virus running around out here is the anti-black racism. That's the biggest virus. You want to know how white supremacy exists? Because of the structure that's being put in place. That's been going on ever since this country became a nation. And this is why the shit continues. So the whole system itself needs to be destroyed and rebuilt. Period. When we bang the drum for reparation, we're not just saying that because it sounds good. Old nigga Jim Clyburn, don't worry, I'm going to cook your ass in another video. I'm going to cook your ass in another video, old nigga Jim Clyburn. Talk about stop sloganeering. Stop sloganeering. Sloganeering kills elections. Stop sloganeering. Yeah, you bitch. You old crusty fuck. Because see, it's sharecroppers like you is why this shit's allowed to continue. Because you won't stand up for black folks. You bitch. This is another piece of evidence why reparations should be on the table. Don't worry, I'm gonna get to that in another video. But these two lowlifes, they have no business having better living conditions than the children that they enslaved. As far as I'm concerned, when they go to jail, they shouldn't have a bed. They shouldn't have toiletry. They shouldn't have access to a shower. They can see how it feels to be treated like a second-rate citizen. You're not subscribed to this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and share these videos on your social media platform. Shouts out to the LDBC. This your man. Scream at me. Ho!